What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video I will be going over some of the best weapons to use in Legend Onslaught. And when I am done giving what I think are the best weapons to use, I will give you what I think is the best overall loadout for all of Onslaught, so stick around to the end of the video to see that. I put a ton of time and effort into testing a wide variety of different builds and weapon loadouts so that I could give a proper assessment of what works well and why it works so well as what doesn't. So I'm confident that my suggestions in this video are effective tools for easily beating 50 waves of Legend Onslaught. So as a thank you for all the time and effort it took, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. A couple disclaimers first, this is geared towards Legend Onslaught as that is basically all I play. I did do one regular wave 50 just for the triumph, and for that I used Bad Juju. And I believe that is the perfect thing to start with to kick things off for this video. I love Bad Juju. It was my first exotic weapon in D1 and I've always liked when I get to use it in D2. It is actually amazing for stringing together kills on low level enemies because it ramps up its damage and you never have to reload it as long as you keep getting kills. But as soon as you get into higher level content, its value gets diminished because tankier red bars won't die to it quickly, and then if they don't die within your magazine, you have to reload, which sucks. And you also lose the String of Curses damage buff, which is what makes it so strong. So this is kind of the perfect example to illustrate the difference between a weapon that shines in regular Onslaught, but struggles in Legend Onslaught. Now, the reason I wanted to make that disclaimer was so you don't go running to the comments section saying such and such weapon is the best thing ever. Certain weapons just do much better in other activities. Let's contrast this with something like Wishkeeper. It is an exotic strand bow. This thing is nothing special in low-end content where trash ads will die in one shot to any bow in the game, but it is exceptional in endgame content because it's an exotic primary, so it hits 40% harder than legendary bows, and it has the ability to lay a trap down and suspend enemies as well. This gives you more time to deal with those enemies, which is really valuable in Legend Onslaught. But in lower end content, it is better to just outright kill an enemy than to bother suspending them or freezing them. However, in Legend Onslaught, the time that Wishkeeper buys you is very helpful for getting a level 50 clear. So I hope that helps to enlighten you on what makes certain weapons better for certain content. Like I said, I love Bad Juju, but I also understand its weaknesses and where it sits in the wider sandbox of Destiny 2. So with that out of the way, let's talk about some weapons that I do not recommend before I talk about the weapons that I do recommend. First up is legendary machine guns. I want to stress legendary here because there are a couple exotic ones that are amazing that I will get to, but you should not be running legendary machine guns in Legend Onslaught. I know Hammerhead has made its glorious return, but here's the thing. The waves of ads are a mix of red bars, orange bars, and yellow bars. I had great success with legendary hand cannons just taking out the red bars, or exotic primaries are also really good for this. So if you can have a mixture of abilities from your build and a good primary weapon for general ad clear, then you should not be wasting your heavy slot on a machine gun whatsoever. One of the most dangerous waves in Onslaught is Demolitionists, especially in the 40 plus waves. If you're rocking a legendary machine gun, you absolutely are not going to be able to chunk them down in time before they destroy your ADU. Another weapon type that I do not think is good in Onslaught is swords. They will put you into the fray and this gives you a high risk of dying, and dying in Legend Onslaught can be very costly. The one exception to this is if you have the Stronghold Gauntlets on a Titan, as this basically makes you invincible, but as a rule, steer clear of swords as well. Another is linear fusion rifles. Yes, they have good single target damage, so you would be good against like a Tormentor or something, but at most you are running into 2 Tormentors in an entire run to 50 waves. So it's not worth handicapping yourself for all the other waves just to deal good damage to a Tormentor when it spawns. So that brings me to the legendary heavy that I most recommend for Onslaught, and that is grenade launchers. I mentioned how a good primary weapon and some abilities are more than sufficient for taking out ad waves, which is why I recommended against running machine guns. But when those high health yellow bars start storming the ADU, it is good to have something that can put them down quickly, and I have found GLs to be the absolute best for this. They got a reserve bump in the March 5th update, and ever since then, they become some of the best heavy weapons in the entire game. Edge Transit drops from Onslaught, and I have used a variety of roles, all with great success. Autoloading Frenzy, Envious Assassin Bait and Switch, or the ultimate utility role of Chain Reaction and Bait and Switch. This gives it great ad clear and single target damage. The only downside is you have to remember to reload it. I also love Explosive Light, as in Onslaught you are always making orbs. So the only time you don't have 6 shots of Explosive Light is if you die or if you're in the boss room and you're not really making orbs. but for the ad waves, Explosive Light is absolutely wonderful. I'd kept around a Wendigo with autoloading and Explosive Light for years and never touched it, and now it is one of my favorite weapons. Legendary rockets can be alright as well. Like, I have beaten 50 waves with rockets, but I much prefer GLs personally, and I think they offer better ad clear utility, and that they're better for bursting down the high health targets like shielded brigs or demolitionists. Let's stay in the heavy slot for a bit, because there are also some fantastic exotic weapons to run in Onslaught. At the top of my list is Parasite. I mentioned having burst damage is crucial for those tougher waves, and Parasite is literally the king of burst damage. But it also has awesome ad clear because not only does it do more damage, but it also gives a larger explosion when you have many stacks of Worm's Hunger. This thing can one-shot any champion at times 20 stacks. It's a monster. And it's really easy to get stacks of Worm's Hunger super quickly with all the ads that you're killing. I've heard lots of praise for Eyes of Tomorrow, but I have never liked shooting this weapon. It is way too passive and slow for my playstyle. But alas, I tried it out, and yep, I don't like it still. Yes, it can technically have unlimited ammo if you're using it properly, but with rally flags before bosses and heavy crates dropping on your bonus objectives, this is definitely not needed. I've ran many double special loadouts and never ran into problems with ammo. Everything that Eyes of Tomorrow can do, Galahorn simply just does better. I know this to be true because when I ran Eyes of Tomorrow, my friend Time Lord ran Galley and he was stealing all of my kills. And while it may not have potential unlimited ammo, it does have the benefit of buffing your teammates' rockets with Wolfpack rounds, and it got a reserve ammo boost as well on March 5th. Galley, as expected, is great in Onslaught. Another weapon that may be good but that I hate to shoot is Grand Overture. It has great ammo economy, and you can build it up to launch a volley of rockets that take out high health targets quickly, and they also blind enemies. It's a great weapon, even if I don't necessarily like using it. One weapon that I have loved since it came into the game is Xenophage, and this is one of, if not the best exotic to run in all of Onslaught. The thing with Xeno is it has always been a jack of all trades and master of none, and I talked about how good GLs are because they have this dual functionality where they have decent ad clear and great burst DPS. Well, that is what Xeno provides, but it won't blow you up if you hit an enemy that is too close. It also has some of the best ease of use in the entire game. It's a joy to use. You don't have to hit crits, and it has no damage fall off, so you can hipfire it as well. And it hits very hard on yellow bars and can take out ads that are grouped up, and it has a deep enough magazine that when demos come along, you can spam it and deal some pretty good damage. And if Overcharge Machine Gun is active that week, it hits for an extra 25%, making it an absolute monster. I cannot recommend Xenophage enough. Another strong exotic machine gun is actually Thunderlord. I know the joke in the community is that casuals love it and sweats love to dunk on it, but I tried it and I was actually pretty impressed. Granted, it was on a machine gun overcharge week, but I did beat a wave 50 with it. It has good single target DPS because it drops lightning strikes and ramps up its rate of fire, and it obviously has good ad clear because it's a machine gun. The reason I didn't recommend legendary machine guns is because of their lack of high single target damage, but Thunderlord actually can put out some good damage. But I only really recommend it for the overcharge machine gun weeks. Otherwise, just use Xenophage. Winterbite is a fun play if you know what you're doing with it, and Leviathan's Breath is nice in boss rooms, but I don't recommend it for ad waves because it is very slow firing on that first shot, and speed is crucial in the ad waves. I tried Heir Apparent as well, but it chews through ammo a little too quickly. I love the Lament, but I don't love it in Onslaught. So the only other heavy exotic recommendation I have is Anarchy. I did only use it on the overcharge GL week, but I gotta say, this thing is made for Onslaught. You can set traps to spawn kill enemies, and it does damage over time, which is actually really nice on things like demos, as you can shoot a couple shots and then hide if you have to. Being able to damage from a safe position is crucial. So many times people die on the demo phase and you're pretty much screwed, but with Anarchy, this allows you to deal passive damage while being safe. I was super impressed with this thing when I ran it, and would definitely recommend it. And I want to give a special shout out to the Whisper of the Worm. This thing has great total damage on single targets. I absolutely do not recommend it for the ad waves, but it's really nice on the boss phases for taking the bosses out quickly. And with us being able to craft it with field prep, it has really deep ammo reserves. So if you swap off of it after the boss phase, you may still have some heavy left over. That's pretty much a wrap on the heavy weapons, so now let's look at the special weapons. I made a video yesterday talking about the different loadouts I use to beat Legend Onslaught on every subclass, and if you watch that video, you may have noticed one weapon archetype in a lot of my builds, and that is special sidearms. Let's start in the kinetic slot with the only special sidearm currently, which is Forerunner. It will take up your exotic slot, but that's fine, as I already discussed how awesome legendary GLs are to run in your heavy slot. Forerunner is great for dealing with adds out of far, especially the Shriekers. And then when a Tormentor comes, Forerunner is damn near the best weapon in the game that you could use. It is excellent for hitting crits, which is damn near mandatory on Tormentors. On the day that Onslaught came out, we wiped to late round Tormentors twice. So on our third run, I suggest we all switch to Forerunner. And what do you know, we beat it with ease on that run. Forerunner is excellent. Another special exotic sidearm is Buried Bloodline. It is awesome as it grants you Devour, which is amazing for survivability, and it can also weaken targets, making them easier to kill. I can't say enough good things about Buried Bloodline. But if you want to keep your exotic slot open for something like Xenophage, then run Indebted Kindness. This thing is a monster, and we have anti-barrier sidearm this season, and it can just one-shot barrier shields. It's amazing. Mine also has Lead from Gold and Volt Shot. So it can spread Jolt, which is very good for crowd control on all the ad waves. And Lead from Gold means you can literally use this thing like a primary weapon. I'm not exaggerating. I run double special with this as my main weapon a lot, and I never run into ammo issues. I just love this thing. It is great at quickly taking out higher health red bars and even does good damage on things like orange and yellow bars. It's extremely versatile and effective. Sadly, we don't have a legendary special sidearm in the top slot, but Bungie is introducing a Strand special sidearm in Final Shape, and I would absolutely run 2 of these in Onslaught when that option is available to us. Or I may run the new one in the top slot and run a glaive in the energy slot. Some people do not like glaives, and I don't understand the hate. They're extremely strong and very ammo efficient, and you can also tank a ton of damage with them. I won't go into specific glaives, but rather just say glaives in general are great for ammo economy and are really good for survivability with their block function. And the melees can deal a ton of damage with the right builds. Very strong weapons in Onslaught. Exotic trace rifles can actually be really good in the right builds. They're good for ad clear, which is obviously a large part of Onslaught. I beat 50 waves with Wave Splitter and Dagger's Scepter, and they performed extremely well. And as of the making of this video, I haven't really tried any of the others, but I could see Prometheus Lens being really fun to use as well. I've used Divinity as a swap exotic for Tormentors or boss damage phases, and it's really great for that, but really only as a swap weapon. Fusion rifles with Reservoir Burst are nice for chunk damage and AoE ad clear. I also did a 50 wave run with Telesto, and it was pretty good. My personal favorite though is my autoloading Chill Clip Riptide for slowing enemies down. Chill Clip can slow and freeze enemies, so it's capable of stunning overloads and unstoppables, which gives it awesome utility. Shotguns are a little too aggro for Onslaught in my opinion, and snipers are too reliant on crits in a wave-based horde mode. Though I do often swap to Succession for Tormentors depending on my build. I used X-Dearus in a run, and while it performed well with my particular build, I understand that it is certainly not the best thing to use, but I did have fun with it. And speaking of GLs, ones with disorienting grenades are very good for stunning enemies and giving you some room to breathe. Don't use these for damage, but they are excellent for utility. Having one disorienting GL on the team is always a good idea. And wave frames aren't bad either. I beat a Legend 50 with a God Roll Forbearance, but it left a little to be desired in the later waves for sure. It's a perfect example of what I talked about at the start of the video with certain weapons being better in lower end content. Forbearance can literally clear out entire rooms in lower end content, but in higher end content, if it can't one-shot a red bar, then its potency goes way down. It is not unusable by any means, but it's not as strong in the later waves of Legend Onslaught to be sure. So for me, the winner is Special Sidearms. Also, I want to give a shout out to Witherhoard. This thing is super versatile and good in basically any content. And if you know the enemy spawns, then much like Anarchy, you can just spawn kill a bunch of ads with it. I always love Witherhoard. Is it the best? No, but it is certainly a decent pick. And now we come to primaries. I don't want to be too controversial here, but legendary primaries in Destiny 2 are not in a good place right now. They just do not hit very hard, and if you're trying to take out enemies quickly with a legendary primary, you're not going to have a good time.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Legendary bows hit decently hard, but they have a draw time which isn't ideal for fast enemies like Marauders rushing the ADU. Conversely, something like an SMG can shoot fast, but it hits like a wet noodle. Again, I don't want to see comments saying, oh, but my Rossarago 4 is a beast in Onslaught. Yes, I have a Godroll Rossarago 4 and it shreds in at-level content, but there is a time and a place. and what makes it strong in low-end content, it cannot do in high-end content, much like bad juju. It is dependent on rapid kills to get going, but you can't do that in later waves of Legend Onslaught. So let me tell you a story. I soloed the Legend version of the Seraph Shield mission, and I tried like 5 or more times to beat it with a God Roll crafted Abyss Defiant, but I just kept dying in certain spots. I put on Zali's Bane with explosive payload and One for All, and I beat it the first try after my loadout change. So here's what I will say, and I stand by this. If you're going to use a legendary primary, use a hand cannon or don't use one at all. Either use another special or an exotic primary. Legendary hand cannons are the only viable primary in Legend Onslaught. Sorry not sorry. Hand cannons are in a great place in PvE right now and hit very hard, and bonus points if they have a damage increasing perk like Frenzy or One for All. These damage perks are super easy to proc, and wouldn't you know it, Midnight Coup can roll with both of these, so try and farm a good Midnight Coup. Plus we have Unstoppable Hand Cannon, so you get utility there as well. If you want an energy slot hand cannon, I love Zali's Bane, but if you don't raid, Trust from Gambit is honestly extremely strong and very easy to get. I love it. Epochal Integration is another easily acquirable hand cannon. So now that we have that out of the way, I do have some exotic primaries that I can recommend. Graviton Lance is built for a mode like this, as when it gets a kill, it does big AoE damage and can chain more kills. It's a great weapon. Sunshot is probably the best primary overall for Onslaught. It is a hand cannon, so it is automatically good, and it does AoE damage, and it can benefit from things like Flint Striker to get Radiant for rapid precision hits and final blows. I cannot say enough good things about Sunshot. It's just awesome, and probably the best pick you could go with. I beat a run with Revision 0, and it can build up charges for sniper rounds, which is great for utility, and it hits very hard. It also has intrinsic anti-barrier, which is nice. Quicksilver Storm, despite its nerf, is still very good and gets that extra utility with the grenade launcher shots, and it has Overload Auto Rifle this season. And it can also benefit from the Strand artifact perks for even more utility. Final Warning is a sidearm that absolutely wrecks enemies. This thing hits like a truck for a sidearm. It is wonderful. And I even beat a Legend 50 with Sweet Business and Actium War Rig. Sure, we were doing it for the memes, but it is honestly great in there, especially with Actium War Rig because you won't have to worry about reloading. Osteostriga and Thorn are great on their own, and we all know they're awesome weapons, but they are even better with Necrotic Grips. And Malfeasance hits very hard, and especially so with Lucky Pants. And I haven't tried it yet, but I bet Centrifuge could be decent in here as it can blind enemies. Vex Mythoclast could also be pretty good. So those are my recommendations. You want weapons that have good utility for ad clear and single target damage, but that are not too precision based like bows or snipers, as you need good ease of use. So what would my perfect loadout be? Well, Midnight Coup is awesome and so fun to use, so if you wanted a primary, I would recommend that with Unstoppable Hand Cannon. Ideally with the role of Explosive Payload One for All or Firefly in One for All. And then Indebted Kindness with Anti-Barrier Sidearm. Again, ideally with Lead from Gold and Volt Shot, and then Xenophage in the heavy slot. But if you're confident running double special, then you could go with Indebted Kindness and Xeno, but then run a Chill Clip Fusion Rifle or a Disorienting GL, and then have a Sniper to hot swap to in the kinetic slot for taking out the Tormentor. That is my go-to loadout, and for even more optimization, you could swap out Xeno for Whisper on the boss phases. I have used a ton of different weapons and build strategies over the past few weeks in Onslaught, and I'm very confident in these suggestions. I know what works well and what doesn't. My friend Steam joined me for a couple Legend runs last week, and it was his first time running Legend. He'd only done regular runs to that point. Our third was an LFG random and didn't have comms. As such, I went tryhard mode with Celestial Nighthawk, Midnight Coup, Indebted Kindness, and Xenophage. And Steam was on a Loreley Splendorhelm Titan running a similar loadout. And our LFG had Orpheus Tether. Anyways, the runs went extremely smoothly and we did them in under an hour, and Steam said that those two Legend runs were easier than any regular run that he'd done with randoms. And much of the reason is thanks to how good and versatile weapons like Indebted Kindness and Xenophage are. Now, by all means, I definitely encourage you to run the type of loadout you want to run and have fun with. Like I said, my friends and I used Sweet Business and we had a wonderful time. But if you're trying to farm quickly and efficiently, or just trying to get your first Legend clear, then the weapon recommendations I made in this video should help make that a much easier task. Anyways, that's it for the video. I hope you found it helpful and informative, and if you did, then a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. And if you're still watching, then thanks so much for watching to the end. It means a lot. Take care.
I don't. Okay.